Suddenly, I'm awake and my heart is racing. What woke me up? I'm lying in a sleeping bag. It's pulled up over my head with just a small hole to breathe through. What woke me up? I'm surprisingly warm inside my sleeping bag. It's cold in the tent and probably colder outside. What woke me up? I never sleep all that well camping, but I certainly never wake up this scared with my heart racing. What was it? It was a noise. Something in my dream. Trying to remember it is like trying to grasp onto a cloud. It keeps slipping away. What was it? And then I hear it again. A low growl. I've heard a lot of things camping. It's funny how the mind increases what you're hearing. It exaggerates what you can't see until eventually you've convinced yourself that whatever's out there is surely a bear or a moose ransacking your campsite. And by the time you get the tent flap open and get the flashlight on, it's just a possum, maybe a raccoon passing through, sniffing around. But no possum or raccoon ever growled like this. I listen carefully, lying as still as possible. I don't want to give it anything to be curious about, and I try to get the faintest hint of what it might be. I hear only slight shifts of stones, creaks of twigs as it makes its way around the tent. My wife is sleeping next to me. I don't want to wake her, so I lie there as quietly as possible and think about how I got to this place. It's early March, and we're camping at a backwoods campsite in Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky. A few days before, I was at my cousin's wedding, and on the way back to Chicago, we're taking our time, stopping at various campsites along the way. We'd signed up a little bit later than we would have liked for this campsite, which, according to the log, hadn't been occupied since before the winter. And as the sun was setting, we were making our way to the trailhead, and the trip was an adventure in and of itself. It included fording on a ferry, a swollen creek, a longer than expected drive as the sun got lower and lower on the horizon. And then as we reached the trailhead, we expected a 1-mile hike, and it turned out to be much longer and more difficult than that. The trail hadn't been maintained over the winter. Sections of it were washed out, blocked by fallen trees, perhaps. And at one point, we had to take off our packs and throw them across a swollen creek and then run and jump across to get to the other side. Eventually, we made it to the campsite in pitch darkness. Somehow I got a fire started. We had dinner. We finished all our food. We went to bed with our clothes still on, plus coats, hats, gloves. It was quite cold. And that's how I found myself inside this tent at some point in the night, hearing something outside moving around. Suddenly, my wife shifts in her sleep, and in the silence, it sounds like a thunderclap. And the thing outside is startled as well, and I hear it making its way swiftly through the underbrush away from the tent. I lie there for a long time, my ears straining, trying to hear if it's coming back. And eventually, somehow, I drift off to sleep. Well, when morning comes, and it comes quite early when you're camping, we woke up, and I told my wife about what I'd heard in the night. I thought it might have been a dream, although it seemed very, very real. As we started to break down the tent, our plan was to break camp, head back up the trail, get in the car, and go into town for breakfast. I noticed in the soft earth around the tent and the rest of the campsite prints, huge, cat-like prints the size of my palm. They were all around We took pictures with objects included for scale, finished packing up, and then hurried up the trail and out of the woods. Well, later that day, we saw a park ranger, and we told them about our encounter. Now, national park rangers have heard it all, so I was a little bit surprised when this particular ranger seemed very excited. She said, "Oh, good, you found our cougar. We haven't seen her all winter. We wondered if she was still okay." So a cougar, or a mountain lion, or a puma, goes by many names. But finding out what it was, being able to put a name to it, helped solve the mystery. And it made me glad, in a way. This one time, my brain hadn't overly exaggerated what I might have been hearing. I had had an encounter with wildlife, this elusive creature, closer than I probably wanted to get. And it made me remember that you never quite know what you're going to encounter out there in the deep, dark woods.